which is a big book, has a lot of pages, but it's pretty nice. You can use this book, and you can avoid the topics which are not necessary, and you can read about the topics which are important, which you feel are important. So the
So
epics,
it's something that we download, or it's a link that you can share?
it's you can download. I mean, it's you can download a PDF, or you also have an HTML version of it. I will show it to you.
Okay. Okay. There was one question which there were multiple questions, but I don't recall them as of now, about the workflow criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it meant we had to pick the rule criteria and the evaluation criteria. Was that the answer to that particular question?
Right. Seems so. Yeah, rule criteria and evaluation criteria. Right.
Because there
Because
was one which had like what are the two parts to the workflow. So with that would have the rules and the actions. And the other question was based on the workflow criteria. So what are we talking about when we say the workflow criteria?
do you remember the
I'm sorry,
question?
Jeet, if I'm taking up any session time. I just thought since you were asking about the questions.
It will be good, if I know the question specifically. What was that?
Okay. Okay.
But fine. I mean, let's see. We will see and discuss on that part. But since I just opened this Apex Developers Guide, so I think this is what I'm going to share first of all.
Okay. Yeah, no
So
problem.
you just type in this Apex Developers Guide, and you will get the first thing that you get is force.com Apex Code Developers Guide. Okay. Second is Visual Force Developers Guide. So these are two nice books that you have. Now don't download the PDF version of it. Okay. Always have the HTML version. Okay. Open the HTML version. The best part about the HTML version is that you will have quick navigation options here. Okay. And you can quickly navigate from one page to the other page, and you read whatever you want to read instead of you going from page by page. Never ever download the PDF version of it. Okay, always try to open HTML. All right. Now, getting started, introducing Apex development process, all these things are not important. Skip this. Writing Apex, understanding data types and all these things. If you are not aware of the data types, if you know basic programming language, you know data types and all, you know what is an integer, what is a string, if you know those things. If you are aware of those things, you can skip this part also. I mean, it does not make too much of sense for you to read all these things. But if you feel that you need more information on what are the data types and all that stuff, you can go through this, right? But even if you understand the basic data types, that's fine. My point is that I don't have to understand all the data types at the first place. If I understand 5 of them, let me get started on the programming with 5 of them, and I can read about other data types later. So that is the thing, right? So don't try to spend too much of time on this thing also, writing Apex. Ways to invoke Apex, this is the most important thing that you have. Okay, this is the chapter. Invoking Apex, what are the different ways? Anonymous block. Now, reading this much of it from here till here before the integration, don't get into integration, that will lead you to unnecessary confusions and all. Not required. Avoid that. Wherever you see integration related line, you can skip that. Don't take that into consideration. Okay, because a few places you will have some integration related keywords used, but you can just skip that. Just try to understand whatever you can understand. So anonymous block is Apex code that does not get stored in the metadata, but that can be compiled and executed using one of the following, either from the developer console or force.com ID or from here. So out of this, the third one you do not understand, the second one you do not understand, but developer console you definitely understand, right? So that is how it is, right? So my point is that try to read and understand whatever makes sense to you. Okay, instead of breaking your head over what you do not understand. Then trigger, I think you guys have talked about triggers, so bulk triggers, there's that, all that stuff that is there. Then asynchronous apex. Okay, asynchronous apex has a few things. What is a future method? So if you spend time on this, don't get into web services, not of use. You can read about email services, and you can read about Visualforce classes, which I think you guys already know. So that's it. That should be your area of studies. After that, it's all appendices, references, finishing touches, debugging, testing. This is all secondary part. So once you're done with the first phase, your first phase includes this much only: asynchronous, anonymous blocks, triggers, asynchronous apex, and this email service and Visualforce classes. That's it. This will almost cover all of your apex. Okay, so instead of going through this entire big book, you should just be focused on these areas. Got it? All right. So you know what is?
Okay.
I have a few questions. Do you know what is a governor limit? Do we know what is governor limit?
Those are the restrictions set as to how many triggers can be created.
Not just on triggers, but on everything there are certain governor limits. Right.
Oh, okay.
So I will try to make things a little more simpler for you. I will explain the initial things. You can look into the examples and read more about it from here. See the example. Okay. So I am actually going to give you a brief of everything. Okay, in today's session I'm just going to give you a brief of everything, what you need to know and what is that thing, and you can then go and read more about it if you are interested. Okay, so Apex is a program, right? Writing a program will not resolve the issue for me. I need to call that program, right? And there are certain ways of calling that program, or we call it ways of invoking Apex, right? Anything that you write, any program that you write, there has to be a way of invoking that program, right? So how do you invoke that program? Salesforce allows you several ways of invoking programs. First way is on VF page. This thing I think you guys are aware of, right? Create a class, call that class as a controller on the Visualforce page. This is what we need. Okay. Second way is using trigger. So trigger works with DML operations, right? Trigger works with a DML operation. Whenever there is a change happening on the database, any data manipulation happening on the database, that is when the trigger methods are called, right? Third is anonymous code block. What is anonymous code block? Anonymous code block does not need to be combined with anything. It is just a simple code which I want to execute. Okay. Instead of I connecting it with a trigger or with a Visualforce page, I just want to write 4 lines of code and execute that without anything, no support required. Okay. Sometimes it may happen, you have written 4 lines of code and you just want to execute those 4 lines of code. And that's a one-time activity. You just want to do it. Alright. Let's say you want to create a new record. For example, you want to create one new account through programming. Okay. So you can just say account A equals new account, name equals IBM. Alright. Now this is what you want to enter inside your database. Insert A. So this is your code. That's it. So you don't want to put it inside a method, a trigger or anything. You know that this is just a one-time activity. I want to do it, and let me just straight away put the code. That is where anonymous code block is used. An anonymous code block which you just will use once. Okay. So these are 3 ways of invoking Apex. Either you can invoke Apex through a Visualforce controller, call it visual force controller, or through a trigger, or through anonymous code block. Okay, these are three methods. There are more methods, I'll come to them. Okay, but these three are synchronous method. Okay. These three are ways of invoking Apex synchronously. Now, anyone who understands what is a synchronous Apex or a synchronous method? At least look into the name and try to guess what can be synchronous.
No, Chief.
Any guesses? I know that you guys do not have the answer, but what do you think? What does synchronous? What can synchronous mean? Why am I forcing you to think on this? Is
To sync it.
Yeah, go ahead.
To sync it with something.
To some extent,
sync
correct.
it with the visual force.
Sync it with something. Okay, to some extent, correct. Anyone? Any other thoughts? So sync it with what? What can we sync it with?
The visual force.
Okay. How about these two?
The visual force page.
How about
The
trigger and
visual force
anonymous code
page of
block?
the trigger. Yeah, trigger. How do you sync it?
Okay. Anyone who wants to make a guess apart from Cecily? Okay, fine, no worries. But Cecily, you are correct on syncing it with something, right? So synchronous means okay, it is in sync with something. So this synchronous Apex means which is in sync with the user side action. Okay, the method which exactly gets executed in sync with the user action. I open a page, all the methods of my visual force controller get invoked, right? Or I click on a button, the method gets invoked instantly in sync with that click of button. Does it happen that I click on a button today and the method runs tomorrow, or will it run after 2 hours? Click on the button, the method will instantly run, right? That is a method which is in sync, or Apex code which is running in sync. Okay. Same way, user trigger. The moment you are doing DML operation, it is not that your database manipulation will happen now and the Apex code will be called after 6 hours. That will not happen, right? It is in sync with that particular DML operation. Same way, your anonymous code block, the moment you run it, it gets executed. Alright. Now there is another type of Apex which is asynchronous Apex. Asynchronous Apex does not happen instantly. Okay. This is supposed to happen at a
Is that the?
Oh, sorry, what is that?
Like the time based? If it's
Time
a
based,
time-based,
that can be one example, and there are other examples.
Okay.
Right? Time based is one example. Okay. Now, one of the examples, as Cecily said, time based. Okay. Some methods you want those methods to run at a particular time, 6 a.m. in the morning. You click on the button now, or you invoke the method now, but it should run at 6 a.m. Okay. That is the Apex scheduler. So this Apex scheduler is an asynchronous Apex method. Okay, asynchronous way of calling Apex. Here you define a schedule, you define a time when the Apex method should run. Okay, it has got nothing to do with the user action. Doesn't matter whether the user clicked on something, did not click, some DML happened or not. It will asynchronously run in the backend. Okay, it's got nothing to do with the end user interaction. So this is one Apex scheduler. Now for you to refer to and read more about it, Apex scheduler is this. Okay, this is the page. If you don't understand it once, read it 5 times, you will definitely end up understanding. See, everything is defined here. Months, dates, days. So you have the scope of defining everything here. Okay. So this is an Apex where you would basically define a method and you will also define the schedule of that. So you're scheduling the Apex. Got it? So to invoke the Apex class to run at a specific time, first implement this interface and then specify the schedule using the schedule Apex page in the Salesforce user interface. Okay, so you can schedule that Apex using the user interface where you have those classes and all. There you have an option of scheduling an Apex. But any Apex class that you want to schedule, that has to have this thing. After the class name, this implement schedulable has to be there. So a class which does not have this implement schedulable, that you cannot schedule, right? So that is the thing. Got it? So now I think you are okay, you understand what is an Apex scheduler, right? Now read more about it and get more information on this from here. Second way of asynchronous Apex is a batch Apex. What is a batch Apex? Batch Apex is when you have a huge amount of data to be updated or inserted, or some operation to be performed on a huge amount of data, and you see that this cannot be done at once. You cannot just do one click and do that thing. Instead, what you want things to keep on happening in batches. 50 records in a batch get updated, and then the next 50 records in the second batch, they go for the update, and that keeps on happening in the back end. So that is again an asynchronous method, right? So here is the detail of the batch Apex. Okay, a developer can employ batch Apex to build complex long running process. So if you do have a long running process, for example, a developer could build an archiving solution. So if you're trying to archive the data, so this is something which can run on a nightly basis, looking for records which were entered into in a particular time range, and archive those records, right? So here it is using batch Apex. So for batch Apex, you have to be using this thing. Yeah, like Apex scheduler, you had to use implements schedulable. Here you have to make it implements database dot schedulable, batchable, right? So that is what your batch Apex is, and the batch Apex has 3 methods. Okay, start method. Batch Apex consists of 3 methods. One is the start method, one is the execute method, and one is the finish method. Okay, start method will basically be used for collecting all the data which need to be processed. Execute method is primarily the method which needs to be executed. Like there are all the records you want to for example, you want to define a batch for all the records which were created last week. They should be updated. For example, all the records which have been created in last 1 week, they should get updated. You want to update them using some value. Okay, so start method is the method which will put all those values at one place. Okay, so it will collect the information. It is called at the beginning of the batch Apex. Okay, this is used to collect records or objects to pass to the interface method. So the records which need to be executed. So this start method will basically be used for collecting the records. And then there is execute method. Execute method is the actual execution method which will do whatever update or insert, whatever you want to do. So the actual operation will happen here. Okay, execute. And finish method will basically kind of inform the customer that, or inform you that the all the batches have got completed. Microphones on mute, please.
Axon, dendrite, nerve body cluster, cerebrum.
Microphones on mute, please.
Cerebral.
I am also not able to mute the microphone. Amir, can you please try muting the microphone?
Internal.
Strange, no? Alright, whatever. Okay, so execute method, and then the finish method. So finish method is something that you want to do when all the batches have successfully run, right? It's called after all batches are processed, right? So every time a batch runs, and finally when all the batches have successfully run, you will run an execute method. Okay. So now details on the batch method with example is here. Just read about it. Try to get a little more details on this. That is one of the asynchronous epics methods. Right? Even if you do not know a batch epics line by line, if you understand what I am speaking right now, you can explain any scenario during your interviews. That is what I want you to understand. Fine. And if you read, just by listening to me, you might not get all the answers correct. But if you read that, if you understand the concepts there, you will be more than clear. Okay. So you will have a lot of stuff to talk during interviews. You might not be able to write the code, but you can definitely talk and explain during the interviews.
So Jeet, I have a question. So for each batch, are we using the 3 methods, or we can take one method and use for a particular batch?
3 methods. Your batch needs to have the start method,
all the 3
execute
methods.
method. Yeah.
Okay.
You see this one? This is the start of database.batchable context. This is the execute, and this is the finish. So this is the batchable class. Inside that you have to have a start method, and you have to have the execute method, and you have to have the finish method. That's it.
Okay.
Do not have something inside a particular method, like in this example you don't have to do anything in the finish. Just keep it blank, but you have to put it there.
Okay.
Okay. Then there are 2 more things. One is future method. Okay. Now this Apex scheduler is basically class. Batch Apex is also the class, but this is a method. What is a future method? Future method is a simple concept. Future method is, because we have governor limits, we know governor limits, right? So governor limit does not allow us to do certain things. So it puts a few restrictions. Now imagine that your computer is, your Salesforce is already running a method, okay? And that is when your second method also tries to run. Then what will happen? It might hit the limit and the second method will get cancelled. Already there is a method which is running. That can be a batch method or something else, okay? That is already running in the backend. Now other method tries to run. What will happen? The governor limit will be hit, second method will get cancelled because the first one is already occupying the space, right? In that case, because you do not know that maybe there can be other method which is running, or the system is available for running this method, and we are not going to do a check every time, right? So what you can do is you can design some future method. What is a future method? Future method is a system, like for a synchronous Apex, what will happen? Either the method will get executed, or it will not get executed. It will throw an error, not available, whatever number of SQL queries or whatever the resources. Our resources are not available, and it will throw error. However, a future method is something which works, which waits for the other thing to get cleared. So it waits for the queue to be cleared, and once the queue gets cleared, then it runs. Okay, so it's a future. That is the reason why it's called a future method. So you just have to execute this method, and it will automatically, even if something else is running, it will wait for the resources to be available, and once the resources are available, this method will automatically get executed. So this is much better than your synchronous method. Got it? So this is again something, but this can also not be done on a Visual Force page, because a Visual Force page, the end user will not keep on waiting when the other method will get over, and when this thing happens. Got that thing? So that's the logic here for the future method. And there is one more which is called the queuable Apex, which is similar to our future method. It also gets queued. Okay, this is something that they have recently released. So I have also not worked too much on this, but this looks very similar to the future method. Okay, so And here the only difference is in future method, before you write the method you need to give add future annotation. So I told you now that future is not a class, this is a method. Okay, so which means before you write the method you have to use add future annotation. So any method which has add future annotation is supposed to be a very decent nice method, will wait for its turn to come, will let the other methods work, and once the resources become available then it will get executed. Queueable apex is similar to future method, but that is again basically on the class level, not at the method level. And here you say implements queueable. Okay, so queueable apex is what it's called. So instead, earlier this was future method. Now the future method concept is already there. They have made a queueable method also. Queueable. So this is also for class. So for scheduler, you use this keyword implements schedulable. For batch, you use implements batchable, and for future you use the add future annotation, and for queueable you use implements queueable. Got it? So these are all asynchronous effects. If you understand these things, you are good. Okay. Apart from this, there is one more thing. If you guys can spend time and read about that, that is Apex email service. What is this Apex email service? Apex email service is basically writing an Apex class which can track some inbound emails. Okay, emails which coming to a particular email ID. It can track those emails and it can perform some action using those emails. Let's say you receive cases through emails. Your company's cases are raised on the email. Yes, there is an email ID in which the cases are sent. Now you want to directly take the case data from that email and put it in your case. So that is where you have to write an email service. Okay, that is what an email service is. So email service basically lets you create a new email ID. So Salesforce will create an email ID for you, which will be very weird, something like this. Okay, so it will look something like this, which will be very weird, difficult to remember. But you can set it up. All the emails sent to this email ID can process that Apex code that you have defined, and based on the Apex code, it can take the data and put it into your tables. So that is what an email service is. The simple concept, nice concept, easy to understand. To use email services, you can just do and set up and all that things here, and there is a class I think written, create task for contacts. Okay, so based on the email that you receive, a task needs to be created. Got it? So see, from the email it will break the information in the email to certain things. Priority becomes normal, status inbound email, subject email subject, is reminder set true, that sort of things, and it will go and insert a task. Where is the insert new task? Got it? Yeah. Cecily, I think you were saying something.
Yeah, I got this part, but I was thinking about the future methods. So do they, we have already created something and we have kept it, put it in this using the future method, but do we get the warning that it's going to get processed?
No.
Or?
No.
But so, what if things have changed and we have forgotten about it?
So future
is that how that is?
No, a future method will get executed. Today or tomorrow it will get executed, right? Or after an hour it will get executed. So there is no problem at all with that, with the future method. So it's not that it's not going to get executed. And a future method in Salesforce assumes that you are aware of it, that it will take a bit of time to get executed. So like, once you try to do a data load, right, then it is in process, it's queued, it's in process. So it might take, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and by that time it gets executed.
Okay.
Fine. If you want that, okay, fine, this future, after the future method gets executed, I should receive an email, right? So you have that scope of, at the end of that future method, just write a line to send you an email. So you can write a fix for that, right? So you have to do that, but future method automatically does not have any such thing. The same thing is applicable for batch epics also, right? So if you want, you can define one more finish method. But future method, because it's just one method, that inside that method only you have to perform that one action of sending an email or updating some field so that you can be notified. So that. Got it?
Okay. Yeah.
So we are clear on this. I think apart from this, you don't need to focus on anything else. If you understand this much, you are pretty good. There's another way of invoking Apex using JavaScript, but until and unless you are not onto the JavaScript side, don't think about it. But leave that thing. Okay. Now, once you are okay with these few things, next set of things that you should start reading is this part of the book, which talks about Apex transactions and governor limits. What are Apex transactions? Okay, what are the governor limits? Understanding the governor limits. So this is for knowledge sake, right? Basically, once governor limits, we need more. Once we are doing the development and all that stuff, we need to understand the governor limits so that we can avoid hitting the limits, right? So this is something which is required once you are pretty good in these things. So don't confuse yourself with the governor limits now. Now anyhow we are going to perform an example of 1 to 10 records, so that is not going to hit the governor limit. Okay, so once you are solid in these concepts, then go into the transactions, governor limits, understanding execution limits, all that stuff, right? Till that time I don't think it's required. Okay, so this is going to be your second phase study: Apex transactions, governor limits, and Salesforce features with Apex. Okay, so this should still be the next level, where you read about using a chatter in Apex and all that, approval processes. So this is again going to high level. How do you control approval process using Apex and all that stuff. So most of the times you would not be asked about it. Even if you are asked, you can easily say politely that I have not worked on it, I never had a chance. Till the time your basics are clear, you will not have a challenge, right? Yeah, if you feel that you're very strong in that part, you start reading examples on this also. Okay. So that is there. Now 1, 2, we have discussed about this part. The next thing that we're going to talk about is our these things we have studied. The next thing I want you to work on the Visual Force. Then take the Visual Force Developers Guide. So Visual Force is pretty simple. We have a few components, and we have few attributes. Have you ever used a component reference library? You know what is a component reference library in Visual Force? No? Okay.
No, I cannot recall, Chief.
Okay. So component reference library is there. When you create a Visual Force page, you will see a component reference library. Okay, this is how you write Visual Force code. This is where your component reference library is. Click on this.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Now you guys remember, right? So component reference library is one of your best friends for Visual Force. So this is your best buddy for Visual Force. Any component that you want to use have been explained here. It has been explained here with an example. So any component you want to use Apex page, what all attributes and what example. So all the attributes under that component, explanation of those attributes, and that component has been explained with an example. Page message, messages, there are two different components. What does this mean? What does that mean? Okay. ID, render, show detail, escape. Every component has been explained. Alright. Checkboxes. So this is going to be your friend when you are trying to design a page and you have been asked to put a checkbox, or you have been asked to put a list, or you have been asked to design a drop down. So select like a list is like a drop down. Okay. So that is the thing. What happens, what does not happen, all the attributes, everything. And this is more like a dictionary. So don't try to read everything and mug it up. This is more like a dictionary which you can refer to when required. Okay. Try to have a overall understanding on this, but whenever required you can refer to. All right. So component reference library. This is one thing which you need to follow. The next thing that you need to follow in Visual Force is the Visual Force Developers Guide. So Visual Force Developer Guide is also similar to your Apex Developer Guide. Visual Force Developers Guide. So it's pretty similar to our Apex Developers Guide. All right. So in Visual Force, basically, you understand about the components and attributes, and then you understand about markups and controllers. That should be fine. Next thing that you need to understand in Visual Force is about, how to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on Visual Force pages. Okay. So most of these are simple stuff that standard controllers, standard list controllers, custom controllers, custom controller extensions, advanced examples has a few examples, and you will like these examples. And don't try to copy paste the examples. Instead, try to write every code on your own. Read from here and write it on your own. That will have a very good effect. You will be able to learn nice things. Using static resources. This is one important area which I want you to read. Static resources basically implies to the resources which are used on Visual Force page, okay, and which need to be uploaded on your Salesforce. Got it? Like an image which you are using on Visual Force. So you cannot take the reference of that image from your desktop, because Salesforce is on cloud. Tomorrow someone else might be opening from some other computer, right? So the reference, anything that you are referencing on the page, that has to be present within Salesforce. So that is basically about the static resources. So any image that you are using on the page, that needs to be uploaded here on the static resources, okay? Or any other file like a CSS file or a JavaScript file, that sort of things should also be uploaded within your Salesforce, okay? So see, it can be an image, it can be a script, JavaScript, it can be image, it can be JavaScript, It can be style sheet or the CSS, right? So we have that option of bringing all these things in our static resources. So this is one common thing that we need a lot of times. We need to use some resources, and those need to be uploaded in the static resources before they can be called onto the Visual Force page. Got it? And then this is how you will refer to them. Like, let's say if you have uploaded an image on your static resources, you want to call it on Visual Force page, you just have to say image URL equals to dot resources dot test message, test image. That's the name of the image, and then you put the width and height. So that is. Got it? So this is how your static resources need to be used on Visual Force. Apart from that, I don't want you to get into other things below this. Yeah, creating and using Visual Force component is fine. Don't go into this complexity level, dynamic Visual Force bindings and all that stuff. That will make things a little more complex for you. So till this point, creating and using custom components, it's fine. All right. So this is what you can try and learn from Visual Force Developers Guide. And Visual Force's guide is easier to read and understand because most of them are examples. For everything you see, there are examples, sample codes everywhere. So that will make things a lot more easier for you. All right. So this is what you have to focus on, and this is what you have to read on Visual Force. Okay. Having talked about these things, there are two more books which I would want to refer. So definitely Apex Developers Guide, Visual Force Developers Guide is what I have suggested, and I have also told you about the component reference library on the Visual Force. There are two more books that I want you to read. One is called an Apex Workbook. This is also provided by Salesforce. Another is called Visual Force Work. Okay, very nice books. But before you get into this Apex Workbook and Visual Force Workbook, try to spend some time on your developers guides. Okay, spend some time on the developer guide, then go to the workbook, again come back to the developers guide. Okay, so developers guide has theory. Read a bit of theory. Even if you don't understand everything, that's fine. Go to the workbook, do a few examples, come back to the theory. So that is going to be a very nice process of understanding things. So you can search for this Apex Workbook on Google. Just search for Apex Workbook. Here it is. Step-by-step examples are given here for doing everything. Try to finish this workbook 2-3 times. Whatever time it takes, do it, revise it 3 times at least. Your life will become easier. So in this workbook, again, language fundamentals and all these things are already there, Apex in context. What is Apex transaction, how a transaction is useful, try it out, this, that, all that stuff. So one by one, step by step, you can use everything. Running Apex within governor limits, bulkifying DML calls, this, that, everything. Okay. So this is Apex workbook. Same way you have your Visual Force workbook. So the other workbook that I would suggest is the Visual Force workbook. Use this workbook to read about Visual Force and get a lot of examples on Visual Force. Introduction to Visual Force, examples, creating listing Visual Forces, enable Visual Force development mode, this, that, alternative page creation. Okay, adding attributes using this. So all examples, understanding simple variables and formulas, everything is given with example. Display data from a record. Then, you know, visual force in Apex, creating location aware visual force pages. Create a visual force page linked to warehouse utility class. So if there is a class that you have, creating a page user related to that, and then add static resource, add a place to display the map. There's that. So these are examples. I mean, I'm not saying that we can do this very complex example first at the first place, but yeah, if you start reading from the first point, you will find these examples very easy. Got it? So this is how this needs to be used. Clear? Tell me if you have any questions or doubts here.
Okay, okay, Ji.
So 4 books
So
I
first
have
we refer to
suggested.
the
Developers Guide, spend some time with that, read some theory, and Developers Guide have examples also. Then go to the workbook, come back to the Developers Guide again, and then try to increase your level. Maybe try and read one more topic that way. And the other thing is, there's one more thing that I was actually thinking of. While you're practicing on the programming thing, even if you're not able to do everything practically on Salesforce, try to write the code wherever you see the code. If you take a notebook and try to write a few lines of code, that will make you more comfortable with the programming. Most of the times what happens is you have been just looking into the code, and the moment you start looking into, like for example this one. Now I'm pretty sure most of you or maybe all of you are scared looking at this, right? Seems, oh my god, what have they written, how many lines of code? Because we are looking at the entire complete code at once, right? So we completely get confused at the first place. Only way to get rid of this fear is start writing it. Read and write it once. At least once if you write, you will have all the logics, why they have written, what they have written, where they have written. Your logics will become a lot more clear. So you will be a lot more comfortable with the syntax part and the writing of the program part, right? So always try to take a pen and a paper and then write the code. If something scares you, try to write it down. If you feel that, okay, fine, there's 4 lines of code, I can easily understand what is there, so you don't need to write in that case. Okay. So that's about Apex and Visual Force. Tell me if you need any other specific thing that you wanted me to talk about. I think I have tried to explain most of the things on Apex and Visual Force. Combine it with the sessions that you guys have already done. I think last session or last to last session I told you all to go back and repeat the sessions that you have attended. So that is again one more resource available to you. So go back, listen to the recordings of the sessions, and refer to these workbooks and the developers guides. You should be fine. Will take a bit of time, but you should be okay. Yeah. Any other questions on this? We are all good?
So you work as a developer? Okay.
I used to work as a developer. Yeah. Now not that much.
Okay.
And now because I run my own projects and with my own clients, so I don't get to write too many codes now. I used to work as a developer long back, few years back.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think someone else was asking a question.
Yeah, G, I had a question.
Yeah. Parthish.
The question was that the test we took yesterday was to get a developing certificate, correct? That's a similar test?
I mean, that's a similar test, but that was basically for, for me to understand, how good you understand things. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we wanted to also practice like a Salesforce administration, is there a different certification test?
Yes.
Or that's the same one? It's a different one. Okay.
For admin and this Dev 401, the syllabus is also pretty similar, and the questions are also pretty similar. So if you want to do an admin certification, it's kind of similar. If you want to do
Okay.
a developer certification, then this test was okay for you. Good for you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So any other questions anyone has?